Here with us is former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and Democratic strategist Joel Rubin. Joel, welcome back. So Iran
Hey, good
initially,
morning.
good morning. Iran initially downplayed the severity of Israel's strike. Now it's vowing retaliation. What changed here?
Yeah, Hannah, look, Iran suffered a blow in the retaliation from Israel, an embarrassment, and frankly, its defenses were destroyed. And so that is something that the supreme leader, he understands he can't allow, rhetorically at least, for it to appear as if Iran is now weaker as a result. But it is weaker. I don't think that these threats are any indication of imminent strike. Certainly, our intelligence community is watching. The Israelis are watching. We have a significant military presence in the region. In addition to aircraft carrier groups, we also, of course, have 40,000 troops stationed across the region to watch. But for the supreme leader, a lot of bluster right now because the Israeli strike was highly effective.
Iran's supreme leader is threatening Israel, like I mentioned, but the U.S. as well. So what could that response actually look like for Israel, and what kind of threat does Iran pose to us here in the United States?
I think that the Biden administration was anticipating that there would be an end to the tit for tat, it's called, strikes back and forth between Iran and Israel. This has been an ongoing dynamic since April, when the United States, when the Biden and Harris administration led in the response to 300 missiles sent by Iran into Israel, and we shot them down along with our allies. It happened again, the back and forth. I think that our forces quite now, frankly, are watching to see, and it will again be in a response mode. I don't believe that we'll see the United States or Israel proactively attack Iran at this moment.
What do you think of the timing? Because these threats are made 72 hours before polls close in the U.S. How does the timing factor in?
Well, it's a little ironic, isn't it, that you have an autocrat in the supreme leader who's been running this country into the ground for several decades, trying to potentially influence a democratic election in the United States of America. Wouldn't be nice if he had allowed a democracy in Iran. I think he'd be voted out quite rapidly. Iran is a big issue in these elections, certainly amongst Jewish Americans. It is a factor in viewing the stability of the next commander-in-chief, who's going to guarantee American security as well as support our ally Israel. And that's where I'd argue that Kamala Harris is stable and steady and has a track record of showing tough determination in rejecting Iran's aggression in the region, in contrast to Donald Trump, who's a bit of a chaos agent and frankly is allied with Vladimir Putin, which is Iran's top patron. So I think this is where it comes into the election, and certainly in key swing states, there are voters in those states who watch this issue closely, and that could be a difference maker.
Speaking of those swing states, let's talk North Carolina. Protesters were at a Harris rally there. Many of them were escorted out. They were chanting, "Stop bombing Israel." How could the pressure from this conflict potentially influence American voters getting ready to now head to the polls?
Well, it's interesting, Hannah. Typically, we don't see national security or foreign policy become the issue that voters use to determine who they'll select as the next commander-in-chief. But it is just under the surface. It's a qualifying issue. Who do you trust? Who do you believe can be there to protect America? And in some of the swing states, some polling suggests that it comes in as the second most important issue after the economy when these late-breaking voters decide who to pick. And that's where I'd argue with Vice President Harris, we have someone who's stable, has a track record as vice president, standing up for and with our allies, including with Ukraine. Now, on the other side, we have Donald Trump, who his former chief of staff, John Kelly, retired four-star Marine, says that Trump expressed admiration for Hitler's generals, which is quite shocking considering that the United States fought a war against Hitler. And so those are the kinds of comparisons I think voters, when they think about national security, when they're finally making that final decision, especially amongst independent, undecided voters, they'll look at foreign policy as a key issue.
Joel, there is a poll. It's from the Manhattan Institute. It shows Harris with a 36% lead over Trump among registered Jewish voters. That's the smallest lead for a Democrat in that group since the 80s. I know no group is monolithic, but the Biden-Harris administration has shown unwavering support for Israel throughout this conflict. So what do these poll numbers say about how Jewish voters see the handling of this war by our current administration in Gaza?
Yeah, Jewish voters are very concerned right now about the state of the world, as well as the state of anti-Semitism in America, and concerned about what they see and hear. And that means that there's a lot of dynamism.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.